just do this raw, because I think anybody can go through, read a book, take notes, write a summary, and search on Google, get other people's influence and talk about a book. But I'd rather just be like, this affected me and my mindset so much that I realized I needed to learn more. And at that time, it's like 2015, in the Bay Area, California, at UC Berkeley, they would have these little, they weren't LCI events, they were UC Berkeley specific. And they were in a classroom on campus. And I just wandered in because I was like, this is cool. I'm interested in this. And I just one day just showed up out of curiosity. But then there was like, I don't know what you want to call it, ecosystem or conversation about this mindset in construction. So I just wandered in. And Jesse, the first time I was in that classroom, it was like choirs of angels. It's like, oh, like the lights. I was super happy I was there. I felt like these are my people. And I'm not super social, especially then. I was very rough around the edges and very construction armor. I was like, this is academics. But I was super curious, and I'm glad that community of people who I still dearly respect and dearly cherish, they let me in. I had muddy boots, and I took my vest off. I came from the job site. Everybody else in the room definitely had master's degrees, at least a master's degree. I had barely graduated from college. So like on an intellectual scale, I'm definitely not equal to them, but on a curious and trying to implement change, I didn't think about then. But at that moment, when I walked into that room with these PhDs, that's how they think.
Oh, man, it's so good and so sad at the same time. This is the second to last conversation between Thomas Lamay and I on the goal, which has been an enormous amount of content. We've got some great feedback, and I appreciate all of y'all for like putting in the time, because it's real time, like 2 hours, hour and 45 minutes, hour and 30 minutes. We got one more, and we're kind of thinking about doing a live stream. So let us know in the comments, chat, wherever you're finding us on the socials, if you're interested in participating in that live stream, and maybe hash out some of the questions that you came up with along the way. This conversation was super cool because we're talking about like the drum and the rope, and I'm not going to give it all away, but I will say this. It reminded me that I need to keep my ego in check, because we talked about a very similar situation in one of the earlier podcasts. And now here we are, fast forward into the future. And I found myself like in real time creating a situation that violated the principles that we're talking about. And so I guess that's kind of the thing, right? Like if you're going to have a podcast or put your word, your thoughts, your ideas out there into the world, it's kind of a good way to keep yourself in check, because it helped remind me like, bro, you're a little bit off track. You need to get your stuff back together. And this is the first episode of a brand new year, 2023. Got to give a shout out to our patrons, Anson Green, Adam Hoots, Carol Raftery, and Davis Hambrick. Y'all have been super supportive all year long. Thank you for being there, standing by our side and contributing to the mission. And for folks that are interested, go to the Learnings and Missteps website, find the Become a Member, click the thing. And if not, it's cool, man. Keep listening. We love it. We got a ton of downloads. We're averaging over 100 downloads per episode now, which is pretty darn exciting. It's been a long road, and to be able to grow alongside with y'all has been super amazing. And based on the response we got from the last episode, we made a little switch, right? We moved the L&M family member shout out to the intro of this conversation, where it used to be at the very, very, very end, which is kind of long sometimes. We're going to keep doing it up here loud and proud. So this shout out goes to Miss Jennifer Munoz. And this one was special because I got like a personal text from her about it. She says, I forgot to tell you, I love the book. I'm only halfway through, but it's nothing I expected to read. It's so great. I love the open and raw honesty in here. And so Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time to read the book and then going out of your way to let us know how you feel about it. It's extremely helpful. And for newbies, if you don't know what book we're talking about Lean in Love, 5S Love Letters, which is about enhancing your relationships at work, at home, everywhere in the omniverse even. So if you don't have a copy, get a copy. If you already have a copy, get yourself the Lean in Love Reflection Journal. We'll leave a link in the show notes to get you to the reflection guide, which is a little sample of a week's worth of reflection prompts, and give it a test drive. If you like it, go ahead and head on over to the Amazon and get you a copy of the Reflection Journal. We'd really appreciate that. And that's enough selling. Here we go to Mr. Thomas Lamay on the goal.
They could be running tech companies and be bajillionaires, but instead they're teaching the next generation that there's a better way. And I'm just like, I want to be part of that. So you know what we did? We became the experiment. Now, this is a really long story, but I'm trying to loop it back to the goal and like my experience. We made a connection, and we had graduate students from UC Berkeley come and do time and motion study. Why? Looking for Herbie. We were looking for Herbie. And not only did we do time and motion study on the workers, but we also did one on ourselves and our information processes.
Ooh.
Yeah. So pointing the mirror at yourself. Easy to turn the GoPro on trade workers. Super easy.
Yes.
And it's exciting to do that. But if you're going to do that, and this is advice for anybody who's into doing production study of trades, if you're not also doing a process study of the way you flow information and how well you communicate, don't even do the time and motion study. It's waste. Don't even do it. And what I mean by that is if you have processes that are not designed well for human beings, that means like if I need to go find the most recent, latest and greatest set of drawings, and it takes me longer than 2 seconds, that is a poorly designed system. Yes. Worse, let's say I'm an apprentice plumber and I have no access to the latest and greatest drawings. I can't even go ask somebody for access. It's just not allowed. That's a superly poorly designed process.
Yes.
That is even worse. So if you put people in poorly designed processes and then we blame people, that's bullshit. If we run people off of projects because we think they're not being productive, but we don't also look at our own processes in the mirror and be like, hey, how are we flowing information to the field? How are we flowing it differently from the CEO of the company that we're building it to the first level apprentice on floor 26? There's definitely going to be some differences in the way you do the tactics of that. But if the access and information is different from CEO to apprentice plumber, that's a problem because now you're hiding information. And if you're hiding information from one party to the next, that's what we call not good. There's other worse things for that. It's all prejudice comes to mind. But yes, there's certain information that doesn't need to be made public because it's just company internal financial stuff, legal stuff, or safety information. But everything else, just share it out. You got a schedule, put it out there. What do you think about that? That's a long story.
The thing that stands out the most is it's fun. It feels good to be out there doing time and motion studies, improving the trade partners, helping them eliminate waste. But it makes me think of 2-second lean, which I think is a great
Paul
thing.
Akers, shout out.
Yeah. And what I've seen is a lot of organizations or teams, we'll just say teams, get excited about 2-second lean. And that excitement lasts about 60 days because they're doing all these topical improvements, which is good. You can build momentum with that. However, there's no effort to make systemic improvements. And so the leader is expecting everybody to be 2-second lean and upload videos and, all the really awesome stuff, but they haven't done anything to minimize the variation and the stuff that kicks them in the face, the poorly designed systems.
We're going to talk about chapter 26. This is the lead-in series. And if you actually read the book all the way through it, spoiler alert, there's a whole bunch of experiments and really easy improvements and optimizations that you can make, but you do that to lead towards a goal.
And what people take away is the outcome of years and years and years of improvement that they made within the business. And we skip that. We skip the hard Let's look at our systems. Let's look at our inventory. Let's look at our information sharing. Let's look at all of these things. Let's look at our throughput and say, hey, y'all out there, frontline workers, you should be improving your own work. Okay. Well, how about you improve your damn work to take the disruption out of my work? Like there's a foundation there, or maybe something that needs to be happening concurrently, to your point. If you're going to be over here trying to fix my business and your business ain't fixed, guess how long I'm going to pay attention to you. You can come up and tell me the 5S, and I look in the back of your truck and it's a mess, and your passenger seat in your truck is your trash can. I have no interest in 5S anymore.
You can't ride with me then.
But if all you're doing is saying y'all need to work and fix your stuff, like, you blind, baby. You got a lot to fix too.
When I reference this at DPR, it's if we can make improvements to our production in the field, and we also make process improvement to the way we flow information, the way we deal with clients, the way we talk to engineers, talk to architects. That's 1 + 1 = 1,000. 1 + 1 equals way more than 2, like exponentially more than 2. It's not even 3. It's like 2 to the power of how many people are doing optimization.
Yes. And so another way that I look at it is I get hammered as the foreman and superintendent about my PPC. And I'm like, okay, so Mr. Project Manager or Mrs. Project Manager, what is your throughput, your velocity, your PPC on freaking processing RFIs and submittals?
Yeah.
Like, you're worried about my output. What about your output?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Who's measuring that? Do you even know what the baseline is of how much should be produced in X period of time? But you're worried about my productivity. You don't give me that stuff, my productivity stops.
Yeah, this is something you can apply. Anybody, if you're a general contractor, you can apply this tomorrow. If you do the forced rank submittal log or the forced rank RFI log, where you take, say you have 10 open RFIs, and I'm going to force rank them, but I'm going to force rank them that suits me, the general contractor. And I don't give it to our architect, who has to do the work, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't show that until I show it to the people that pay them. So I'll be like, hey, I'm not giving it to any wonderful designer. Instead of doing that, we give it to our owner and say, hey, go tell your architect that we need these in this order. That's crap. That's crap. Yeah. The best way is to have almost a daily huddle. Almost, if you could do it, it's hard, but try to at least a couple times a week, even if it's like phone call. Just be like, hey, this is coming up, and I'm going to give you a heads up. And I've made some really deep relationship with designers, and I'm highly biased because I'm in a romantic relationship with one, but never worked together, by the way.
Really?
But okay. No. But all the people that I've worked with, and there's been some really good ones, we still get along to this day. We still talk. And that relationship was founded on trust, because
invest in the relationship.
So, yes. Should we talk about the goal now?
Yeah, let's talk about
all of that leads in. It all leads in. So we talked about drum buffer rope. Remember that?
Yes.
There's a lot of critics out there about drum buffer rope. I'm not saying that this is a universal application, that if you use drum buffer rope that you can turn your company into the next Amazon. No.
Right.
It will perhaps contribute to some success. There's a whole bunch of other things that apply. But definitely, if you're not tying together your issues with your schedule, with your variation, what I mean by variation is that in construction, there's 2 types of variation. Number 1 is the change in design, just because of decisions. And here's a spoiler alert. Any project you're ever going to work on, any project you've ever worked on, and any project that's happening this second, there's going to be some changes happening. So don't get upset when there's changes. Yes, it's upsetting, but it's not the end of the world. Take a breath, Take a lap around the job site, calm down, and understand that there's some fundamental things. And here's one thing that helps with that drum buffer rope. So who do you give the drum to? You give it to Herbie.
Yes.
So the drum is in a marching band. The drum is the pace of work. So if you have constraints, don't work faster than any of your constraints. It's waste. And it's hard. That's a hard one to do. But any work that is faster than Herbie will create inventory. And we already talked about when you have inventory, you have defects. And when you have defects, you have all kinds of problems. It just creates all kinds of chaos. So the drum is the constraint. So if you got a constraint log, that's your drum. But if you could do it, the constraint log should update your schedule, not the other way. Let's say you're just setting up the work for the day. The first thing we want to look at is your issues and constraints, because that determines your decisions. It's not the opposite. It's not, hey, let's make the plan and then acknowledge that there's problems. It's the opposite. Because why? If you're not looking at constraints, you're going to plan for way too much work in process. You're going to make all kinds of overproduction. Buffer, that's time. I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter who you are. Elon Musk, the Pope, the President, Dalai Lama. It don't matter who you are. You can't buy time. It is ever fleeting. You can't even influence time.
Nope.
No one can. You can't buy time. So you have to constantly acknowledge that time is a ever receding thing. So if you think that you have extra time, you don't. You have no extra time. So what you want to do is that you want to set buffers in front of due dates. Why? Because of variation. You're going to have variation. It is a rule of, it's like gravity. So if you got to get to the airport, the airport, sometimes you can get through real quick. Sometimes right. There's some variation. A whole bunch of other people want to go. The whole bunch of other people want to go through the airport at the same time. So we all got to get through SA, and they don't work at the same drum that you're on, right? Their Herbie is much different.
Oh yeah.
So that's buffer. So put a buffer in front of your due dates. That means if something's due, don't expect it to come in on time. And 2, don't also expect it to come in early. Just expect things to have a little variation to it. So if we're trying to make a plan for something, give yourself some time. And that way it like deletes the mindset that we don't have extra time. We need to get this resolved, because if there's problems later that we don't even know about, then we can account for it then. Otherwise, we're hosed.
Yes.
So that's the buffer.
Yes.
And then rope. So between Herbie and the front of your plan, you tie it. You don't let the fast person in the front that's ahead of Herbie, that's already shot through the bottleneck, don't let them get away, because all that does is it does the same thing. It's planning for perfection. The rope is a control. So the rope is a hard conversation. The rope is making a decision that even that it's your A team, they need to crew down, or they need to do maintenance, or whatever it is. So the rope controls the release of new work. So like in the project I was working on, we got spread out in this vertical building. Here, let me pantomime. We had work on a lower floor, and we had work that was past the bottleneck, the enclosure, and it was starting to spread out. And all of a sudden we had all these empty floors with nothing happening. So all of a sudden we have all this inventory in front of us, and we can't get to it because it would get damaged by weather, because it's drywall and insulation. It's not waterproof. So we had to use some temporary measures to remove the iron skillet from Herbie, the enclosure. So, but what we probably should have done that would have been cost no money is put a control on the structure.
Yeah.
So even though we were high-fiving, man, we topped out. We had a big old barbecue. We gave away prizes, iPads, TVs, tools, and it was fun. I definitely, it was definitely good. I don't want to say that was like a bad thing. It definitely was good, but we also celebrated a whole bunch of inventory, a whole bunch of waste. So the rope is a control. So you got to put a control on your work that's through the bottleneck. So don't let them get away, because if you don't have any control on the faster tasks, then we create variation. Yeah. Yep. So hopefully that explained it. I'm not an expert. That's why, and there's a lot of criticism to drum buffer rope, but that is the scheduling method. That is the theory of constraints that I understand. How I understand it. I didn't even have to take notes. That was off my brain here. Nice. But what's your theory of drum buffer rope, or what's your take on that?
Well, so for me, I don't know if I'm using that thinking or working on applying that thinking to my business.
Oh, damn.
Because I just started my business. And so that lead thing would be getting more clients, right? Getting more work. But I also have to execute the work. And I have.
Are you saying you're Herbie?
So that's the fun part is like my ego is the front runner.
Mm-hmm.
And then my actual capacity to perform and deliver is Kirby, right? Like my ego says, yes, I could do more. Yes, I can do that. Yes, more money, more revenue. I'm successful in my first year, like all that stuff. But I still have to do the work.
Yes. Okay. So your ego and your brain and your body
yes,
are both the front line and Herbie. Awesome.
You got it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Right.
The joys of self-employment. Yeah.
Yes. So cool. What is the rope that tells my ego, hey, dummy, chill out because you got to sleep and you're training for a marathon and you have friends and you have family and you have podcasts and like you can't do everything.
Variation.
So I got to have that thing. Otherwise, my ego is going to go sell a bunch of work and then I'm going to disappoint a whole lot of clients and then I'm going to have a full-time job again, which I really don't want. And if I did, this is a promise. If I have to go back into like full-time work, I'm going to plumb. That is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go be a plumber. And if I can get away with it, I'm going to go be a plumber's helper and just work and go home. That's it. I don't want to be dealing with all the drama. Anyways, back to the answer. So what I've put in place is some checkpoints that help me create that string, that rope, so that I don't go oversell, right? And so what is that rope? Well, it's a limit on the number of hours, committed hours in a month. And as soon as I hit a certain threshold, some things go into effect to slow down that ego, right? Like not necessarily the ego slowing down, but help the client say, ooh, I don't want to pay that rate. But in 2 months, I'll be free so I can go back down to my base rate. Does that make sense?
So it's a control mechanism.
It's a control mechanism.
Yeah.
It is a rate increase once I hit a certain threshold of hours so that I can help if the client's prepared to pay that extra fee, or they can say, no, when can I get to the regular rate? Okay, well, let's do that in November. I don't have backlog yet. And if I get you on the board for now, then I will maintain that rope. And the rope has some stretchiness in it based on rate, but it gives the client the opportunity to say yes or no. Ideally, they say no, because then I can give my client that I've already got on the books the degree of attention that I want to give them.
Yes.
If I get too much work, I'm going to start cutting corners and start underserving them. And that is not a good plan. So that's my rope, is I've got that little mechanism in place that says, you need to, like, you are not, my ego, me, I do not have the self-control to just say, no, I shouldn't do that. I got to put a mechanism in place that helps the requester say no.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. What's the buffer? What's your buffers?
So the buffer is, so I've got two tiers.
Your drum is your week or your hourly man hours per month engagement
Correct.
time. Your rope is the rate. What's the buffers?
So my buffer is this is a new thing. I have designed in rest and recovery days in my month, which total 11 days. So I can absorb some work for a finite period of time, but when I'm absorbing it, it's cutting into my rest and recovery.
Oh, okay.
Right. So there's still a third of my month is available that I've dedicated to rest and recovery. But for whatever reason, if somebody just says, yes, I'll pay it, it's going to get into my rest and recovery, but also that is not sustainable. So I've got to, right. I've got to be able to say, okay, I hit my buffer. Like I'm already down to 10 days. That's a bad thing. Down to 9. That's a really bad thing. And I will feel it physically because that's a lot of travel. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of everything. Because, I didn't know this, Thomas, and I should have known, but I still didn't know. I didn't realize how much prep and follow-up time there is in serving a client. There's a lot.
Oh
way
yeah.
more than I anticipated.
Especially
So
third party. Yeah.
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 And so those are hours. Like you said, I can't buy time. I can't text Michael Jackson and ask him to give me time because there ain't no more time to be had. I got what I
Unless you
got.
have
And I
a
got to
time
work.
machine. That's the one exception. If you have the time
Yes.
machine.
For me, it was okay. What system can I design? Because I absolutely have the agency to design systems that will better serve me and help me also better serve people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a good lesson. So if you have a constraint, that's your drum, remember? You can put a buffer in front of it, and that's a decision-making system.
That's
So
it.
you can say, hey, I'd have 11 days, but this month, for whatever reason, for priority reasons, I'm going to do 10. So I give a date back to the constraint or to the drum, and you can make that decision. If you had 0 days, if you had it finished to start. If
Yes.
you had it that if you miss one day, or if you try to add one day, then you need a 32-day month.
And those don't exist.
You can't do it. You can't even buy it. Even if you
Nope.
had Elon Musk money,
Yep.
you
Yes,
can't
sir.
buy time. That's so good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Let's do chapter 26 because it leads into this. Because this is the challenge. And Alex Rogo, our hero, he goes back to headquarters and he goes and sees Bill Peach. So you have the agency in your own organization. I have some. I have some agency. I have some. I still have to do stuff for people because they say so, but I do have influence. But Alex has probably similar to me, that he has some agency within his own plant, but he definitely doesn't have almost any agency on a corporate level. So he's got to go report. So if you remember in the previous chapter, they're like, our own decision-making process is flawed because we have to give these metrics of efficiency to corporate.
Yes.
And the corporate, based on the efficiencies, figures out, they make decisions based upon these metrics. And these metrics are inherently flawed because the systems that are designed to create these metrics have all kinds of problems or all kinds of issues because all the decisions they made about prioritizing and whatever it is, they had the expediters, they had all these like rules and regulations that's creating all this chaos, and all this chaos makes it almost impossible to have good efficiencies. And even then, they can't change the chaos. They can't change the processes because they don't have the agency to do so, because those processes are dictated from the metrics that they give to corporate. So what does Alex do? He says, F it. And he makes the agreement with Cool Hand Lou.
Yeah.
He's like, whatever. If we have poor efficiencies, I don't care, because now all of a sudden they're like, our decision-making process is creating variation. Let's change the way we make the decisions. And Lou's like, if you change that decision, your efficiencies are going to go down, because all of a sudden you're going to have, and the decision was, if you have a non-bottleneck task, if you have a non-bottleneck task, that means if you have the Boy Scout that's in the front of the line, if you don't put a rope on that Boy Scout, and I'm not saying put rope on children, but
Right.
I'm just saying if we don't have a control mechanism to stop overproduction, then don't even do any efficiency. It's like if you do time and motion study on your plumbing crew, and I'll be like, well, Jesse, like you put your gang box over here and your cut things over here and your tools are over here. And I saw these two guys, they took 20 minutes extra for their break. We need to have you do this remedial action, and need a corrective action report from you by next week.
Yeah.
Right. And then Jesse's like, hey, the half of the time I'm in these super inefficient meetings, and the schedule that you give me is incorrect, Thomas. And I'll be like, well, that doesn't apply. That's just how it is, Jesse. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. That's the bull crap. So Alex is like, whatever, I'm going to go take the hit for my people. So he walks in with his, this is 1980. So it's probably a binder. It's not a file. It's probably a series of binders, and he has to go turn it in. And he sits down with Peach, I'm just trying. I'm going off memory here. I'll try to find it in Kindle. But he sits down with Peach, and he's like, Bill Peach is like, sit down, man. Come here. Come in the office. Sit down. We got to have the old chat. We have to have real talk. Hashtag real talk. And Bill Peach is like, we're going to close your plant. It's not making money. We got all kinds of problems. Yes, you've had some yes, we've heard about some good things coming out, but you have years of losing money. You've made an improvement, yes, and we acknowledge that and thank you for that. But we're going to have to lay off some people and we're going to have to close the plant unless he gives the old unless. He says they need, I think it was 15%. They need to see a 15% increase in, I think it was improvement or something. So it's like a 15% improvement. Let's just call it revenue because that's probably what it was from a corporate guy.
Right.
They need to see, so that means they need to deliver and get paid for 15% more than they are projected to for the next month. And he's like, if you hit the 15% in 1 month, we'll keep the plant open. If you don't, we don't have a choice. Literally, the stakes are on. You ever had a conversation like that?
Yes.
I did. Let me tell my story first. So do the temporary enclosure and jumping the drywall crew ahead of enclosure, I had to basically stick my neck out. Me personally, if that was a poor decision, I was going to get blamed for it. So I had to stick my neck out for it. And they're like, would you bet your job on this idea? And I was like, yes. And that was convincing enough to make that decision. So that was my chapter 26 conversation with my operations man.
Yeah.
Dave. He's a good guy, Mr. Dave. He's no longer the operations manager. He's now a general manager. He's gotten approved. But what was your real talk.
Yeah. So the real talk was, I was responsible. I had just become responsible for all the manpower, all the staffing of all of our projects for the trade partner I was working with. And what I saw was there was a whole lot of dysfunction with temporary services, and we were paying like every 2 to 3 months, the same person more money. Because they just kind of kept bouncing around. We'd release them, they'd come back, more money, but no more skills. And so that was a problem. And it was like recycling, rinse, repeat the same people. I'm like, man, like this is not sustainable. We need to start getting new people in. At the same time, I was serving on some advisory boards at local high schools with CTE programs, right? They were graduating high school students with an OSHA 10 certification, basic tool knowledge, basic systems knowledge, and their complaint was they couldn't get those students a job. They were either, if they weren't going to college, they were getting jobs, but not like a career. they were working. So I'm like, this is stupid. Like there's this pool of new people that are coming to us that have a skill set that this person that I'm paying more than I was last month doesn't have. They don't have their OSHA. They don't have anything. Okay. So started working on a trade-based internship program for high school students under the age of 18, which it was believed to be illegal or against OSHA. And that's not the case. There's some very specific and strict parameters to stay within. Most of them are with regard to the insurance carrier. Once we broke that nut, we were out rewriting the program, submitting it, rewrite, submit. It finally got to a point where they didn't ask for any more edits. And so I asked, is this okay? Like, so I'm good to go. I got approval. And like the words I got was, oh no, we're not giving you approval. We're just saying you're not violating anything. So if you're going to go with this, understand that this is yours. And I said, okay. And I said, no. If it blows up, it's on you. I'm like, I heard. And it's like, well, it could mean termination. And I said, okay, I heard the first time. I got it. So we did it, and it ended up being a huge success. But it was absolutely like nothing can happen. These students cannot get hurt. This cannot be like any of that happens. you're gone. Okay. I understand. We did it, and it's blown up, and they do it at every single business unit throughout the business, and it's a
Wow.
big thing now. But it wasn't so much like meet this performance criteria or the job shutting down, but it was more like, if you're gonna do it, it's on you. Not a problem. Let's go, baby.
Yeah.
But that's where the risk is, where the reward is, right? Knowing there's a young man, Jose Mor, who I interviewed him as a sophomore in high school. And he told me what he was going to do was start his own company, his own plumbing company. And he now has his journeyman license. Like, I played a role in that. I didn't do all of it, but I played a role in facilitating that. Like,
Hell yeah, Jose.
that's the
That's
value.
awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Getting after it right now.
Yes.
Doing it. Oh yeah, man. I like to see just a plumbing crew just putting stuff up. It is.
Oh yeah.
It's really cool because like you'll come back and be like, there'll be a stack of pipe over here and a fit and a bunch of hardware and a bunch of stuff, and then you'll come back and it'll be all up, and it's like way up on the ceiling.
Yep.
It's all the fittings and stuff, and it's like, damn, man. I was like, how'd they do that? The magic.
Yes, magic.
Yeah, but I know how they do that. They work hard. And
yes.
Because once you get the fittings together, is it like you get in the flow state? It's like, oh, like this is boom,
Start,
and then
boom,
fits.
boom, boom, boom. Let's roll.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm looking at page 297. It's a 15% increase in the bottom line.
Oh, okay. So straight up 15%.
So
yeah,
you need a 15% lift in profit. Woo, that's a heck of a write-up.
Profit? Hell yeah.
That's not a lift in revenue, like I said. It's a 15% in profit. But think about what Alex was agreeing to, because he knew they were lowering inventory. And they were lowering. So what is inventory? It's operating expense. If you have something that you've made that you haven't sold, it's inventory. So he knew. He's like, shit. All right, I can a 50. You mean to tell me I need to cut my operating expenses by 15%, but have the same throughput and sales?
Done.
So yeah, was it a risk? But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this is a little showmanship? I think.
I think so.
You get people on board.
Yes, I think so. He said, damn it. All right, I'm going to do my best. And he already knew, phew, 15, I got this.
He does. After I'm looking at the book now. He's like, man, we've been eating up backlog at a terrific rate, but he's starting to second guess himself.
Yeah.
I'm in really big trouble. Page 298. So he's second guessing himself. And I made a comment in your live stream. Was that last week? Self-efficacy.
Yes.
Remember that? Maybe.
Oh yeah.
Not. I thought it was solid gold because it's like a SAT word. Efficacy. It's it's your own like view on how you are, like productivity, or like how it's efficacy. It's like a vaccination. So how well does vaccination prevent viruses from, right? So it's a performance thing. So your self-assessment of your own performance is often your worst critic.
Yes.
So your self-talk, the conversation in your head, is often the most toxic conversation that you can possibly have.
Yeah.
And this is some self-efficacy moment for Alex Rogo after he's like makes the deal with the Bill Peach of the world, and he's got to walk back or drive back to the plant with that news. Be like, good news. I got good news. I got bad news.
Yeah.
Good news. We still all have jobs this month. I made a deal. We're not closing the plant. Bad news. You know, the thing that we've been doing for fun or as an experiment.
It's real now.
It just got real. It just got real. And I was at a oftentimes who I forget who said this. It was man. I want to remember. Maybe next time I'll remember. But oftentimes the most improvement happens. And it was at a conference, a Lean Enterprise Institute conference, and they had this picture of a oil derrick on fire. And a lot of improvement happens when you're on an oil derrick that's on fire, because you have no escape. You can't get off, right?
Yeah.
You have to make a whole bunch of. You have to solve a lot of problems in a hurry, and you can't run away. So oftentimes you have to create some kind of crisis. And that crisis is the catalyst to improvement. And I think that's part of the design. I think you have to have a sense of urgency to, and so if you're doing like process improvement or experimentation or innovation, whatever it is, that's cool. But when it's like, hey, we got to do this or we're done. And by the way, we can't go back and just work harder. We have to double down on our innovation. We have to double down on this crazy experiment that we've been running. That takes some serious internal decision. But I think if you do that in a group, that's like the heroic moments that movies are made of. What do you think about that? I'm gonna go to chapter 28. But what do you think about the oil derrick on fire? Because like there's movies with Mark Wahlberg about oil derricks on fire.
Yes.
Or like landing on an asteroid to put a explosive device on it. It's just but like heroics. And we were talking about like male characteristics or not male, masculine characteristics that takes courage and assertiveness and strength. It's in those moments, those decisions, those conversations, when you make that decision that, yes, we're going to double down on this experimental process and that we're not going to waver at all, that's heroism, or that's courageous. What do you think?
Yes, 100%. I mean, so there's two things. Is when I'm on a derrick, my options are super, super limited, and there's very little place to hide. So that self-talk is much easier to ignore, right? Because the urgency is, this is how much time I have to make a decision and act on it, because
Uda. The loop
I
is
gotta
quick.
go, baby.
Yeah.
I don't have time to, what are people gonna think? And hell no, am I gonna burn or not? And is my friend gonna burn or not? And so when we have that urgent change in front of us, I think one of the things it helps us do is ignore all, like, just super, super zone in and ignore all the other garbage, all the self-doubt, the questions around self-efficacy, because we gotta do something. Now, I don't know if you've read the book Thinking in Bets. She talks about,
write it down. No, Thinking
oh
in
man,
Bets.
it's a good one. So she talks about the difference between making good decisions and how that is disconnected from the outcomes. So think of Super Bowl, coach makes a call based on all the information they had in that period of time. They made the best decision they could given the information they had, and they don't cross the goal line and they lose the Super Bowl. Because of the outcome, people will say the decision was a bad decision. The outcome does not define the validity of the decision. The decision was a good decision. It was a sound decision. The outcome, because of the world and things happened, all the variation, turned out to be less than desirable. Had they made it across the goal line into the end zone, that coach would have been a genius and a hero for life. So the outcome has no bearing on the decision. Now, bringing it back into this situation of urgency and emergency and like your life is on the line, like there's real stakes. The consequences are enormous. There's a couple of outcomes. There's one, shut down the plant. Two, keep the plant open. In order to keep the plant open, I got to make a damn decision, the best decision I can, given the information at hand. It seems courageous, but you really didn't have a choice. Like when you're in it, those are your child. You don't have 10 options. You got 2.
Yeah, you're not thinking about being a hero or being courageous. It's just, let's go.
Let's go. Roll. That's it. We got to go, baby. Come on. That's it.
That's a famous quote about some serious heroic shit on 9/11. Let's go. Right?
Yep. Yes. Yes.
They didn't think about their own lives. They thought about the lives of other people. Who knows? White House. Who knows? Right?
Yep.
That's the tragedy that happened in Shanksville. But yeah, that's great, because that is when you do that OODA loop and you go from observe, orient, decide, action.
Yep.
And then you loop it back. But that's a really good point. That's a good point. Chapter 28. I want to keep going. Keep going. It's so good. Yes. He goes back to the plant. Alex, he's like, okay. The good news, though, He's got support. And you know, I think this is an important thing, and we talk about this a lot, and we talk about this with mental health. But and you talk about this a lot, and Jen Lacey talks about this a lot. You have to ask for help.
Yes.
Have to ask for help. No one person. Remember the thing: 1 + 1 = 2 to the power of how many people are on board.
Yep.
That happens also when you ask for help. So guess what?
Yeah.
Jonah shows back up. Jonah's on site.
Woo! It's real now, baby.
And guess what he does? This would be radical. I'm trying to go off memory. Jonah shows up and he's like, you got issues, bro. He doesn't say bro. He's from Israel.
Right.
But he says, cut the batch sizes. So like if you think about they were doing the green tag red tag method, being like, okay, we know that this bottleneck, it can do this much per hour. Therefore, we're just going to prioritize that. And he's like, that worked to a point. But if your goal is to have a 15% bottom line increase, you have to be even more militant about your inventory. This is Adam Hoots moment right here.
Yeah.
So you have to make a decision, and cutting your inventory, that's taking your rope.
Tightening it up, shorten that, baby.
I'm doing some pantomiming. Take that rope.
Yes.
If you actually read other Gold Rat, he says cut the buffers in half, cut your inventory in half. So that's
scary.
Yeah. So that's a half. That would be like your fastest, your most productive crew, probably the crew that's got the lean flag or the trophy. You say, all right, you slow down by half. That's scary, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he starts. I'm trying to think. I'm not even trying to read the book. I'm trying to read like a little what's on my iPhone. But it says small. But think about a smaller batch. If you went to a grocery store, that's not a good example. I'm trying to think of an anomaly about smaller batches. When you're trying to do a whole bunch of processing, and it's got variation, so it's not like you're just doing the same thing over and over and over. So you have to change. You have to do all these kind of changes stuff. If you're only doing a handful of things at a time, things that are manageable, you don't need a whole lot of people. So if you take their batch sizes and shrink them down into manageable parts and pieces and sync it up with break times, all your variation, right? Sync it up with start times, shift changes, all this stuff. Start to synchronize it up. Bring in that rope, tighten it up, bring in your inventory, keep the same throughput, but shrink the batch size. And the thing about batch sizes, if they're smaller, they flow faster. Because if it's one batch, but the batch is smaller, that batch flows through that bottleneck quicker, because it's not. It's if it's 100 units per hour and you only have 100 units, that's 1 hour. Boom, gone, go, boom.
Yep.
We can now change over to something else, and now all of a sudden, we don't have to take 10 hours to do this process. We shrink the batch size, and if we're doing mixed production, that means if we're doing different things, it's not exactly the same thing. And in construction, it's mixed. I don't care who you are. You can be building a high rise that's 200 stories. It's mixed. Why? Because it's a difference between floor 100 and floor 200. The difference is it takes longer to raise things up. It takes longer on the hoist. It takes longer to do it. It's all different. So if you shrink the batch size, now you can be way more agile. It's like being a cheetah. So if there's problems, if there's constraints, if there's issues, if somebody calls in sick, no sweat, because we're only going to process these things in smaller batch sizes. And here's a new decision. And it's scary because it's like, hey, remember that rope that we designed? That rope is now half the length. Everybody now closes in tighter. But the idea is now if we can process more easily and be more agile, why don't we speed up? Herbie's the same, but Herbie never stops now. Herbie doesn't need changeover or needs less time to do changeover. Yeah. And your 3 cost metrics, remember, inventory, throughput, and operating expense, they start to shrink.
They go down.
Throughput stays the same, but your inventory shrinks. Operating expense shrinks because it's related to inventory. And all of a sudden, it's like, man, we just found that 15%. What about smaller batch sizes?
So the value of smaller batch sizes, and I don't think they talk about this in the book, but what I like about smaller batch size is because they're smaller, the problems are more appropriately sized. With a big batch, a problem seems minute. The frequency of the problem, the duration of the problem, the severity of the problem doesn't seem so big if I've got to process 1,000 units in 10 hours. But if I got a process and I'm measuring every 100 units every hour, that problem is proportionately visible. Like I could feel it, and I'm compelled to solve that problem right now and not band-aid it, because now that problem is going to happen 10 times. The reality is it's been happening one time in a 10,000 or a 10-hour day. But when I tighten it all up and that whole cycle goes through, that problem is going to happen 10 times a day. And all that's doing is adding burden to people and screwing up our throughput. So the smaller batch size helps me understand or maybe appreciate the problem appropriately. That's what I like about smaller batches, because it's going to happen again, and you have more opportunity to study it and like actually kill the problem, because the frequency of the occurrence, it's going to happen in the next hour. So let's go. Okay, boom. That didn't work. Experiment. Okay. Repeat. Okay. That's it. That's the new process. Problem's gone. 10 hours. It kind of sucks, but hey, we're making our 1,000 units. Every now and then we got to work overtime. No, the frequency drives us to solve that damn problem.
So if you got smaller batch sizes, the frequency picks up, right? Yes. And your downtime on your bottlenecks is less. You can go faster. Yes. So guess what Alex does? And this is genius. And this is legit. You know what he does? This is cool. He goes back to HQ. But he doesn't talk to Bill. He stops on the floor below, because marketing and CEO, they're all connected. And I love me some marketing people. All the marketing people, they do good work, and they help me out. But let's engineer a sale. So there's a book by Goldratt. It's called "It's Not Luck."
Yeah,
and it talks a lot about how theory of constraint works in retail and sales. But you can engineer a sale. So he goes to the lead salesperson, and it's I'm looking at it. This guy's name, Johnny Johns. It's a typical sales name. Just it's so slick, yes. Right? Yes. Johnny Johns, sales guy, 80s sales guy. He got all kinds of stuff in his hair, and stripes on his suit. Definitely stripes.
Yes. I'm thinking Miami Vice, right? The big shoulder pad.
Got the pop collar.
Yeah, Johnny John, baby.
Johnny Johns. So Johnny Johns, he's like, Alex Rogo, you got the plant that's not performing. He's like, we've figured some stuff out. We need to increase our bottom line by 15%. Therefore, I need some customers. I now have some capacity through a bunch of optimization that now I have capacity. I've now created capacity, and if you have any capacity, let's enter a sale. Therefore, let's guarantee.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
4-week deliveries. And this is before this, they were blowing deliveries by months. So plural. So they're blowing their lead times by 16 weeks. And I was like, this morning we were in a meeting and we were looking at lead times, and it was like 52 weeks. Damn. I hope it's not 53 on a piece of equipment, but that plays. So, but if you can say, I'm going to guarantee Johnny Johns, you're going to go out to customers and say, this product that we manufacture, you can guarantee 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And go out, and he's like, if you can guarantee 4 weeks. And guess what he does? He bets him. Not only he's got a bet with his boss, with his job, he bets Johnny Johns with some Gucci loafers. Some Italian loafers. Those of you who weren't around in the 80s, the loafers, the Miami Vice was a thing. I was a child, but I still remember Miami Vice being on TV. They wore these suits with loafers with no socks, in Miami. Like, can you imagine the smell, by the way? Like,
I never thought of that until now.
yeah, good thing they had to convert. That's why you keep the top down on the convertible.
Yeah, now it all makes
From the
sense.
Gucci loafers with no socks, but it's like, so probably, I don't know what Gucci loafers are these days, but yeah, so Italian. So he's like, and especially sales guy, they love the flashy stuff. So he's like, okay, if I deliver anything more than 4 weeks, you, sir, have Gucci loafers. Go out there and go execute a sale. And Johnny John's is like, you got it. So they literally engineer a sale.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So not only can you be profitable, the lesson here is not only can you be profitable by lowering your inventory and doing optimization and having being more productive, there's also a sales impact that, and now we have capacity. We can do more. So we can grow our company. We can grow revenue, we can grow whatever profit, we can grow all this stuff with the same amount of people, but we're not burdening the people with more work. Right. In fact, we're lowering the burden on our people. Now they have capacity at this new rate that we don't have to increase their work, but we can have more in sales. So they engineer a sales, damn. And he does it in a way that would entice a salesperson. They dangle some flashy, and I'm not saying all salespeople are flashy, but most of them are. But he says 4-week delivery, guarantee it, let's go. And that would increase. And you imagine if you went out and said, hey, we can guarantee 4-week delivery. And these are customers who are used to getting blown off by 12 weeks plus later than the due date.
Yep.
People are going to be like, there's going to be some demand there, right? Yes. Yeah. So that's 28. That's chapter 28. And that's kind of profound. I think I was saying that in a sales meeting the other day. I was like, let's engineer a sales. And even I got some pushback on that one. But engineering a sale is taking what your capacity, like if you know a capacity and it gives you a competitive advantage, that means you have an advantage that no other company has, and it becomes a choice. Like the choice becomes made. It takes away experience and schedule performance, and now it's like we just want to use them all the time. So that's like unheard of in construction. But DPR, we definitely are trying to be competitively advantaged in many fields and through a whole bunch of efficiencies in our self-perform work and all kinds of data and VDC. That's what we're trying to do. But it's kind of the chapter 28 kind of mindset is you can engineer a sale. Yes. I think it's really cool. That's why I really like working at DPR, because they're trying to do that. So, but that's chapter 28. What do you think about that? Engineering sales.
Again, there's courage in that, right? Like he was in a crisis, no-go situation that, right? Like this was real, people's lives, his livelihood, careers, the whole thing, and going and promising 4 weeks reliability.
Like get the dice out. Yeah.
Yes. When the market is exceeding 16 weeks on a good day, like that is courageous. Not just because now you got to deliver, but last week I sucked.
Yeah.
And now I'm guaranteeing that I'm not going to suck anymore. Like that's guts. That's, we talk about, I've been accused of being a sandbagger once or twice, Thomas. And now the reason I did it is for different reasons, right? I would sandbag because if you knew, because this was the dynamic, if you knew I could deliver in 4 days, the next time it was 4.5 days, I was going to get my butt chewed. So I'm always going to tell you 6 days because now I got a buffer, because you're going to overreact if things don't work out perfectly. I could do it in 4 days with the ideal conditions.
Hey, our agreement on this piece of paper says 5.
Right.
Right.
Yes. And while you're sandbagging, like I'm not sandbagging, there's a buffer in there. I would guarantee you 4 days, provided I knew you weren't going to email the world because I went over by 3 hours. You follow me? So
yes, I've had this conversation. Yes, continue.
Yes. So doing that, knowing that I can deliver, and I've done it. Shit, we did it. We were first deploying Trimble. Like the very, very first time we did it on a job in San Antonio, I was the guinea pig.
Robotic machine.
Yeah, robotic. Yeah. setting our points. So all
This
our
is
sleeves,
pantomiming holding a
yeah,
device. Yes.
yes, all our sleeves and all our embeds. It was a hotel, and man, I want to say we had something like 300 sleeves, and I don't know,
Ooh.
800 embeds. And I was like, we were tracking it. We didn't really trust the technology because we'd never used it. And so the first round, that first pour, we were laying out with the device, and we were going back and doing it old school, cross-checking with string lines and tape measures and the whole thing. And it's like, damn it, everything's on. It took our operation from about 6 people to do that work, 12 hours a day for 4 days. It took our operation. I'm like, shit, all we need is 3 people, and we can do it in 2 days.
Oh, with the machine.
With the machine.
Mm-hmm. Because it's more efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's more accurate. Like just like straight up, just walking across rebar, kneeling down on a rebar cage beam, holding the measuring tape up against the form takes a lot of time, right? And asking somebody to move a pile of rebar or a crate of this or a crate of that, that's what was making us take long. But with this device, the technology, it didn't matter. We could just go and lay out. If there was crap in the way, we just kept laying out over here. And when they moved that crap, we went and laid out over there. It was like, smooth. Now, it became a thing. Like, I want to keep that tremble on site. I want to keep that device on site. So I need to go and talk to the GC about tightening up that lead time to pour so we can start forming so I can. All right. So I had to go and say, hey, man, we can install all this stuff in 3 days. On a really great day, on a great week, we can do it in 2. But we don't need if you can shorten this up, I can continue to deliver at this time. And it was, exponentially, we picked up time. But I had to say, yes, we can do it in 2.5 days. And they're like, okay, so we're pulling
Provided these conditions are met.
Yes. Yeah. I need control points. I need this. I need that. And I can give it to you. I will commit to 2.5 days. If I got to work overtime the second day, I'm going to work it. I ain't going to complain. But we need to pull the pours up. And pulling the pour up and then delaying it, that's not a good thing.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was on the line. And my team was like, son of a gun, like, Jesse, why did you go and tell him? I was like, I know, but look,
you cut your batch size. Yeah.
Yes. See, here's what's happening. If we're not going to have access because we only had one device, we're going to go somewhere else, some other project. There's going to be a 2-week delay. It's like, if we don't have that, this is what it's going to do to our labor. And we need, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, you need the machine.
I need the machine. Yeah. And the only way to really I'm going to lose access to it in 2 weeks. So we need to make this commitment or we're going to be crawling around, doing it. And it's summertime. Like, oh, you're okay. Well, yeah, I'm not going to complain about overtime. Let's do it. And we did it. But man, I had to say, a pinky promise, we're going to get it done in 2.5 days, but I need that pour schedule to be tightened up, the frequency to be accelerated.
Yeah, man, you're pulling on my heartstrings here with being productive with excellent layout. Yeah, but it's very true. Yeah.
True. Man.
And I'll link it back to the chapter 28. You cut your batch size in half. You eliminated the manual step with the string line and tape measure.
Yep.
And mental calculation, and you relied upon the BIM model, or at least it might have been CAD, but at least you relied on the points, and you relied upon the reference that was provided by somebody else.
Yes.
So there was some trust.
Absolutely.
You had to trust that the general contractor gave you a very accurate control point for which you can extend your layout from. And so you had to, number one, you had to get on the oil derrick. 2, you had to cut your batch size in half. And 3, you had to abandon a manual step.
Yes.
Because so you had to embrace. So it's like, man, you're like Alex Rogo right here. That's a great story. You had to abandon the safety factor. And maybe not safety factor. You didn't abandon safety, but you abandoned a traditional method that's tried and true. And listen, tape measure, string line, and you gave me the story about the plumb bob. Like, it works. It works.
Hell yeah, it does.
Does robotic total stations work better than plumb bobs? only when they're accurate.
Only when they're then it's
right?
funny because
Because
they were like,
if your reference is off, and trust me, you're talking to a director of quality for a very large operation. We sometimes make mistakes in our layout and we catch it, but if we're totally reliant on the machine to do that and we don't catch that mistake, it's a problem. It's a big problem, because if your reference is wrong, everything else will be
everything
wrong.
else is wrong. Yep.
I can do a whole episode about.
Oh yeah,
I'll save it. Yeah, but I'm highly biased there. But yeah, you definitely hit the heartstrings on many points. But cutting batch sizes takes courage.
Yes.
Takes courage, because you have to abandon some safety factor, and it's usually mental, or it's a risk management thing, right? Like you have to abandon it. We're not gonna use that, like fall back on it. No, like that, like on the burning oil derrick, like throw that over the edge, like get that off. You gotta push that thing off the edge, get it out of the way so we can attack this fire. And pushing it over the edge, it's gone. Yeah.
If we call it a comfort factor, it's more a comfort factor than a safety factor.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Like I feel better having that, because I'm not adding risk. I'm just letting go of that comfort, that cushion that I could always rely on.
That's right. And that when you do that and you reduce your batch size, it creates opportunities.
Yes.
And then you can go back to Johnny John's and some Gucci sandals or Gucci leather loafers that just cup your feet. Oh, you're driving your Ferrari.
Yes.
I have none of those things, but throughput, inventory, operating expense. Throughput, if you can increase your throughput and lower your inventory and operating expense, profit. Boom. It's if you think about it in that sense.
Yep.
That 15% lift in your bottom line, not so scary anymore. You just got to take some risk. So chapter 29, reality strikes.
Yep.
And spoiler alert. Well, it's not a spoiler alert, because hopefully everybody that's listened this far has read the book, because you're only 10 chapters away. But chapter 29, cutting batch sizes, really works.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't believe me, head on over to the Lean Builder podcast, Hoots on the Ground, or Jason Schroeder, Elevate Construction. Both of them will prove it to you, and with much greater tenacity and accuracy and real world examples, that if you take your batch sizes and shorten them down, it creates opportunities. And if you seize those opportunities, your work, your efficiencies, everything can, as long as you anticipate that increase. So if you be like, we'll just go on vacation for 3 months, I suppose you could do that. But if you take advantage of that, be like, hey, this is now how we work. This is new rule. We're going to lower batch sizes and work in sync with our constraints, and the constraints dictate the schedule versus the opposite. Now, all of a sudden, you can design systems that move faster than before in ways you didn't even expect. So, but you got to go find some business.
Yes.
So, talking to Johnny John's, it might have felt great. He's got to go make some sales. And sales is a very subjective thing.
Uh-huh.
So it's not just taking orders anymore. So before, sales would come in with pretty typical orders, and they were doing electrical components. So these components would probably go into radios and vehicles, and who knows? This is the 1980s, so maybe TVs or something, right? Like they're components. So they ship off to Sony, Panasonic, General Electric. So, but the sales is also those same customers. So they have to negotiate with General Electric, Sony, Panasonic, and they have to adjust. It's based upon market demand. So if nobody's buying Sony TVs, they have to create these business deals. But all of a sudden, this is very hypothetical, but if I was Sony Electronics in Japan, and we're making TVs, and this component comes from Unico that's critical to our operation, and if we can get it inside of 12 weeks down to 4 weeks, it's like, that would be nice.
Yeah.
So there's ripples of impact, right?
Oh yeah.
Hashtag. So all of a
Hashtag.
sudden it ripples out. So not only are you doing optimization in your own factory, you have customers that can now be affected, and I think that's kind of key. So when you change your methods and there's improvement that happens, and you change your sales effort, your customers now have to change the way they buy stuff, and that's you can't dismiss that. I think that's very important, and especially for this instance because they're not delivering to Jesse. Jesse, here's your new Unico 2000 device. They deliver to another manufacturer that has to manufacture something and
Assemble.
then
Yep.
sell it. So they're in the middle of a supply chain. So they can't just create all kinds of opportunities. So they have to go find some. And Alex Rogo's got to do some negotiation. So they'll come back and they'll be like, ooh, get me some business. And now he's got to literally make a decision about actually hitting a 4-week metric. And to secure new business, you actually have to make those decisions and then start to deliver on that. So you have to take some new risk. There's unknown things that happen when you do optimization. I think that's very, very important to say that once you make optimization, you can't stop there. You can't stop there. You have to engineer sales, and now you have to influence your customers. And that's hard. That's even harder than before if you're
Yes.
into a leadership position. Before, the hard work was down on the shop floor, that we just got to crank this stuff out, right? Like, hey, we need more workers. Man, nobody wants to work anymore. Like, oh, what's this union problem? Instead, the hard work now goes to it's a leadership issue. What do you think? What do you think about that? I think that's very true. Once you do optimization, you can no longer continue to optimize on the shop floor or on the job site. You now have to change the way you become a leader, and the way you communicate, and the way you do your marketing campaigns, the way you approach work, the way we have schedules, everything that is not the physical act of construction has to change. So everything's on the table now. Everything's on the table.
Yes. Yes. It reminds me of a softball team I was on. First team, we had about 3 people that never played ball before. Never. And we won the league. And there were several competitive players on the team that were complaining. We came back from multiple times being down by 10, 15, 20 runs. And I swear it's just because some of the people on the team didn't know you're not really supposed to come back when you're down 15 runs in a softball game. We won the league, so we got bumped up. Some of the more competitive players on the team said, we need better players. We need to get rid of those scrubs that never played before. And I said, man, I think we should just this is it's a company team, blah, blah, blah. No. We need to be more, we need better players. Okay. And as we improved, the 2 people that were most adamant about needing better players ended up on the bench because they were not improving themselves. They wanted everything, all the conditions around them improved, and they did nothing to improve themselves. So they got left behind, right? And in this case, if all you do is improve the field, improve the people executing the task, and you're not improving yourself, good people leave because there are other opportunities. So you've got to improve yourself, right? And when I'm talking, not like, let's zoom back out, we're talking about the whole business. Like, okay, you did good there. So what? Go do good everywhere else. And like, I mean, to hear you say it's motivating. But my experience as a trade partner is it's always about improving the trades and optimizing and eliminating the 8 waste in what we're doing in our work. Okay, but what about the rest of the stuff? Because I'm gonna finish, and then what? And you're gonna and I like it was easy for me. It's like, oh, okay. So we're going to do this and you want me to be faster and more efficient. Okay, we're going to do that. And I'm going to be done on Wednesday and I'm going to have no work and I'm going to send people off the job. That's all I had to say for them. So we don't want like, okay, like you think I need to go faster. And I agree, but I'm not the only thing that needs to be corrected here. Like I really, really need, how about we get the steel here? Because I'm going to get this roughing done.
Ooh.
We're going to pour concrete, and we're going to have a dance floor for 2 months. There ain't no point in me working overtime if there ain't going to be no structure to keep the work flowing. You have a problem, and you're focused on me. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. That goes back a few chapters. But once you make improvements to Herbie, the spotlight goes off of Herbie and goes to
further upstream. Yeah.
Others.
Yes.
Because we're now looking for the new Herbie. I'm holding a mag light here.
Yes.
But it's incredibly important. So I want to tell a quick story. So we work with UC Berkeley. We work with Iris Tomlin, Dr. Tomlin, and she sent us some graduate students, and they did 2 things. They did time and motion study. We did time and motion study of the way 2 things. So we did, and it was based on Herbie, the current Herbie, which was the exterior curtain wall system. And we had unitized curtain wall. And unitized curtain wall is prefabricated windows. Okay. So it's got the frame, it's got all the gaskets, it's unitized. It's you don't have to do any fabrication on site. It's just set it and forget it. But there's a process to that, and it's very fussy, and you have to be very methodical. But it is very repetitive. So the nice thing about repetitive work is you can look for opportunities, because it's like, if we're going to do this over and over for 28 stories, we're going to do 28 floors of the same work, basically the same work. Let's look for opportunities. So we did. So we got out GoPros and we studied their work. And we definitely found some that where they were, the way they set up their tools, the way they position their bodies, the way they uncrated these units, and there was some optimization, and they definitely, with some optimization, they were more productive, and vastly more productive. So that was really cool, and I'm very thankful for that group of graduate students that came out and did it, and they gave us a really good report, and we did it side by side with them. It was really cool. And then also the glazers and ironworkers of that crew, Prima Stelisa, they were super receptive to it.
Yeah.
Like, they were open to it, and we were open about it. We're like, hey, we're just curious about your work. We're not trying to fire you or anything. And so they were super cool about it. And I'm super appreciative of that, the workers that did that as well.
Yeah.
Because we filmed them.
Yeah.
And we can see their faces, right? And we can see the way they work, and we made improvements, but the way we approached it wasn't about, we're trying to find your weakest link. We're really trying to figure out how you moved your body and how you moved your tools and how they set up their physical logistics. And once we got over that, it was no factor. It was yeah, this is awesome. Thank you for this help. This is super helpful. And the way we did it was, hey, professional football players record themselves at practice. They don't obviously they do game film study of games, but they also film themselves at practice. And I'm like, do you not consider yourself a professional? And they're like, damn, when you say it like that, Thomas. And I was like, yeah, you guys are professional. You're not professional athletes. You're professional ironworkers and glazers. So let's act like the NFL players. And at that time, the 49ers in San Francisco, they were really good. So we had a lot of discussions about that. And so we did. We were like, let's watch game film. So that's what we called it. We called it game film.
Oh, I like that.
They thought it was cool. And I think that's very important, that you show the players the film. You don't just show them the report. You show them the film. And we did. Yes. And I think they appreciated that, because it was kind of cool. And I was like, it was cool. And they thought it was also cool that that UC Berkeley was there, a study of them. So they felt like they were on the Discovery Channel or something. I think that would be cool. If I was a craftsperson and a university was sending graduate students to study me as an experiment, I think I would be interested in that. So, and then that crew definitely did. So shout out to the local ironworkers and glazers union in San Francisco. Those guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Some of them are my friends still till to this day. And then, but the second part that they did They also looked at our processes, the general contractor's processes, the way
Mm.
we moved information.
Yes. Yes. I like
And
that.
which do you think was more efficient? The work in the field? I'm talking without optimization.
Oh, the work in
The
the
work in the
field.
field or
Yeah.
the paperwork, moving information around.
The work in the field.
Work in the field, 100, like by
Yeah.
like not even close.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm talking
Absolutely.
about hours.
Yes.
So personnel hours. So if you had an ironworker glazer crew that set wall panels, I don't know. I'm trying to think back. I think it was about 12, maybe 16 people.
Yep.
Right. Our general contracting staff was 13 people.
Mm-hmm.
So almost equal
Yep.
in terms of head count. So almost equal in terms of work hours per
Yeah.
week. They measured the output of what we did to move information was so much less efficient than the work output of physical work in the field by like not even, it wasn't even close.
Yep.
Wasn't even close. We were so much because of all of the waiting, the downtime, it's just all waiting. It's all waiting. You move something from bucket A to bucket B. Bucket B is somebody else. Somebody else is busy. They don't have time to look into their bucket until sometimes a week. A week will
Yeah.
go by, and if it's a week, remember this is a system, and if we're in a
Yep.
system, it's the entire. I don't want to be. We definitely got paid for that week of work, but we weren't completely efficient, and it wasn't even close. So if you took our salary, all of our cumulative salaries times the work that we did, it was like the ironworkers crushed us. Like in terms of like what they billed for that week of work versus what we billed for that week of work and the output, all things being equal, we were less than half of the value produced. It was less than half. And they showed us this figure and we were like, holy shit. Like definitely don't show that to anybody. We want to hide this one. But instead of that, this is the oil derrick moment. Instead of doing that, we were like, this was a moment that looking in the mirror and be like, you know what? We need to change the way we move information, the way we have meetings, the way we notify people, the way the way you move information. And we made some changes based upon that time and motion study. And time and motion study in a knowledge setting, you don't need GoPros. You just need to see when things do a cycle. And so the advice I'm giving to everybody is like definitely do time and motion study with GoPros, but definitely also do time and motion study of your information flow.
Yes.
Because if you do that, it's 1 + 1 times
everybody.
It's exponential.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool. I would definitely want to share that. And thank you to the group. Those graduate students definitely got their master's degree, and they definitely took a pound of flesh working with a bunch of us. They came over the bridge. We had a good time. They took them up in the high rise, like all of them. They never been on a construction site, and so we had a good time. And I'm really appreciative for those. They probably work for tech companies now,
right.
But, or they're like professional civil engineers. But I'm really appreciative of that. And the lesson there is don't just do the time and motion study in the field, do it in the office. And if you do improvement on both, it's like,
yes. Well, I want to add some clarity because I said the field without hesitation. And it's not just
it is, yes.
Right. But it's not just because I'm biased. That like for me it was an easy yes because they have a scoreboard. They know how many welds, how many inches of weld, how many diameter inches, how like their whole budget, everything is they have an understanding of what the scoreboard of output is. Or maybe the more accurate way to say it is they are much closer to having a scoreboard in processing the stuff that they're responsible for processing than the information flow. Yeah. I don't know. I have never heard anybody be like, even not like look at me like I had 6 heads. Nobody has ever been able to tell or set a target for the number or the duration, the target duration to process a piece of information. They couldn't say what the target was. and they couldn't say what their current performance is ever. So if you're not measuring it, of course your performance is horrible because you ain't measuring it. And the people in the field, they're measured every single day.
Yeah. So if you have a change order process, make a process map and measure
What's the time?
one piece from notification of change all the way through authorization. And
What's
I
the
bet
lead
you'll
time?
I bet you can measure that in weeks.
Plural, 100%.
Weeks. Yeah. How do I know? Because I know. And it's not just the way general contractors move information. It's the same with a trade contractor, right? The way when tell me about like how to order materials if you were on like a foreman on site. Like what's that a very high level summary of?
Yeah.
From the time it takes from ordering a series of pipes and hardware and fittings till the time it shows up.
Yeah. Weeks. Oh, yeah. I'll say a complete order for a system, it could take 2 to 3 weeks. And so I've got to get the drawings. I've got to scale out, do a takeoff. I mean, I don't have to. There's technology you can use for that. But I got to scale it out. I got to get my quantities. I got to translate it onto an order form or type it into an order form, send that to the vendor. The vendor's got to process that, send me an invoice or a quote. I got to get a PO, got to give them the PO, and then the material. Then they got to acquire the material because I'm telling them, do not send me that material if there's any back ordered items. I'm ordering this ahead of time. So it's about 2 weeks to get that material.
And that's without variation.
Right? Yes. Oh, it's yes.
Like, hey, Jesse, sorry, bro. We need to move it. They're adding a new exhaust duct.
Oh God, yes.
So you got to change a bunch of fittings.
Yes.
So you have lead time variation, dependent events variation. What are you talking about here? Is this is this the thing? That's chapter. But the kind of the summary to 29 is like, if you're gonna make a commitment, make it. And then go double down on your processes.
Let's do it, baby. Yeah. Don't play. Shoot.
The 30. Ooh.
Oof.
This is the chopper. The helicopter.
Oh, yes. Oh, this is glamour time.
So this is kind of advice. So when you start to be super productive and super profitable, people start taking notice. And if you become super profitable and you become a best practice, people want to go and see. So my project, the CEO showed up, Mr. Daverin. Yes, we started doing really great things. And people started to take notice.
Yeah,
and we were definitely not perfect. We were not perfect, but I'm trying to be humble. But also talk about a story where the CEO of the largest construction company in the world showed up on our job site, and we had to give him show him around. Like, what's your tactics? What is this crazy method, Thomas, you're doing? Thomas and the team. But in chapter 30, the helicopter shows up outside of Unico, and it's Bucky Burnside, the what's his name? He's probably a bajillionaire. And he was like, what is this heresy? What is this sorcery? 4-week lead times guaranteed.
Yeah, you crazy boy.
What is this? So so a helicopter drops in on Unico, and now it's like, it's go time. It's go time, and be prepared for this. I think this is a good thing. So when and you have to stay humble. I guess the advice in advance is don't let that go to your head. People will want to know, and you have to definitely share out, because you can now have a huge ripple of influence on other people. Because now if you become the best practice, you have to teach.
Yeah.
So not only do you have to be this crazy, you got to enter sales, and you got to do all this stuff and do all this optimization. You got to bring in the rope, right? You got to do all this stuff. Now you have to become a teacher, because all of a sudden they're like, hey, if you're super profitable, what is it that you're doing? And now can you please teach this to other plant managers? So all of a sudden, Unico is like bringing in all kinds of just everybody with the title and letters in front of them: VP, CEO, CIO, CFO, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
They're like, they just increased their bottom line metrics, and they go ahead and drop their monthly report, and they hit it by 17%. They didn't just hit 15.
Blew past
15% bottom line. So they did a lift. And I don't know what the lift was. I don't have the sheets in front of me, but
right.
You imagine if you had a 15% increase in profit from month over month, people are going to know. Like there will be analysts from Morgan Stanley asking questions, right?
Like what? Yep.
Yeah. So like people want to know, and now it's like, what is this? What is this magic? So yeah. So for me, the CEO of the company came in, CEO of Turner Construction, CEO Peter Davern, shows up and he's like, "Hey, I'm in San Francisco. I want to check it out." And we were like, "Well, we got to do this special tour, and we got to clean up the job site." And we definitely did clean up. I'm not going to say we did not.
Yeah,
we definitely cleaned. Like we cleaned more than we normally do. So I kind of regret that in a way, because we were pretty we kept things pretty tight. It wasn't perfect, but what we did not do, we did not change anything. We did not shut work down. We didn't do anything differently than, and we didn't clean up like the building. We cleaned up like around the perimeter. Like we got rid of the graffiti and the pop bottles that are blown against the construction fence and that kind of stuff. But we definitely cleaned that. So we definitely switched out the dumpster so it was empty. Like it looked good. The job site looked pretty good. It needed it anyways. So I guess it was a good excuse. So thank you, Mr. Davern, for showing up. We needed a little love. But other than that, it was as any other day. And we gave Peter a tour of the job site, and we just showed him around. And we didn't shut down work. We didn't hide ladders. We didn't do any of the normal shenanigans that we would normally do. We showed it as it was. And one thing that Peter mentioned to me later was like he appreciated that, because if you think about it, he probably gets a red carpet rolled out wherever he goes
all the time. Yep.
Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not there all the time, but
right.
There definitely was pressure to do that, and we definitely cleaned up. But other than that, we wanted to show the true story,
real deal,
and what happens at Unico. Back to the book. Is they're like, we think you're lying.
Yes,
and
yes, always.
And please meet. Not only am I'm bringing my CFO and corporate controller, and we're going to go through the books. And then we have the corporate operations executive that's going to go through the factory.
Yeah.
And it's like, so we think you're cooking the books here, Alex. And they're like, this is if you use our accounting methods, you didn't have a 17% increase. I think it was less. Let me find it. But it was less than that, and it wasn't an insignificant amount. Let me see. 12.8%.
Yeah.
So that's under 15. Oh, shit.
Yeah. Damn it.
So the reported lift in profit was 17% that they reported to corporate. And we did that on our project with Peter Davern, CEO. Same thing. We gave them a report. Says, hey, we made this much profit. So, but one thing Peter didn't do is accuse us of lying. In the Unico example in the book, they did. They're like, hey, our corporate accountant says you didn't hit your 15%. In fact, you were under that. And this is Hilton Smythe, the little snake.
Yep.
He goes, hey, and this isn't Bucky Burnside has his corporate helicopter, but the Hilton Smythe shows up with all these corporate accountants and says, you didn't make it. This is a naysayer. And I think that's important. I think that's important because you will find, because when you start to stick your neck out, and then so you'll be an outsider, and so you'll look differently, and that takes courage. And then you'll have, if you're successful from being sticking your neck out, even more people will try to take you down.
Yes.
Because now not only are your metrics super good, now the people who play by other rules, they want to take you down. And
yeah, because the game has changed. and they might have to play harder.
You changed the game, and not only the way we changed the game was we didn't make the workers work harder. We made us, the leadership, work harder.
Yeah.
And through that method, plus a bunch of time and motion study, plus a bunch of like managing our constraints and understanding inventory and operating expense and managing our bottlenecks and looking at constraints, syncing stuff up, shrinking the rope. I'm doing a very summary, but we made all of these decisions that were not risky in terms of like human life, but risky in terms of like we could get fired about this.
Right.
People who don't make those kind of moves, they don't like that. It's like, oh, you change the game, you change the rules on me, Thomas. And Hilton Smythe don't like that, so he brings his own accountant in, and they do their own estimate and accuses Alex of cooking the books. Man, what do you think about that?
I think it's a real thing. I mean, think about, I was listening to Jordan B. Peterson, and he was talking about herds, right? Like animals travel in herds because there's safety in the pack. So if you separate yourself from the pack, you're subject to being eaten by the lion. Now, how does that relate to people is what you're just talking about. There is safety or comfort in the status quo. And the funky thing about like a zebra is not going to say, let me kick you in the face and keep you out of the herd. But people, humans will. If I decide to stray from the herd.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And say, I'm not going to go to the status. We got to do something different. This is what I'm going to do. People in the herd, not the entire group, but there are members of the group that are going to continue to kick you out and point out how different you are to feed you to the lion. They're sacrificing, hoping, because the status quo that's the comfort zone right now. The outlier sometimes is a nutcase like me. Sometimes the outlier is going to, like you said, change the game, elevate the standard, and the herd over here is going to have to assimilate, right? They're going to have to adapt to it, and it's easier to go and throw that guy to the lion than it is to change.
Yeah, because remember, corporate's like, you're a best practice. Go teach everybody else. Everybody else was like, I'm good over here. My plants, we're not being accused of
right.
cooking the books, or we're not risking our jobs. We're good. Why should we change? Hey, we're profitable. We're kicking out 7.5%. Alex plant over there was not even making it profitable.
Right.
Now all of a sudden he's making 17.5%. Is that right? I'm gonna instead of being like, hey Alex, tell me like how are you doing this? Instead of that, their immediate reaction was they're lying.
Yep.
Yes. That's bullshit.
Yes.
That's bullshit. So that's chapter 30 in a nutshell. So they get it's this weird time where you get all this fanfare. Your most prized client is flying in a helicopter, like checking you out, being like, "How are you doing 4-week deliveries?" Like that, your client is coming to you and congratulating you, and at the same time, the people at your own company are shooting daggers in your back, being like, "You're lying," and not only that. You changed the rules, but if you followed the old rules, you didn't even meet the metrics. You're out of here, bro.
Right.
So it's this weird time. Now it's like, but what I think that is, and this is a Malcolm Gladwell. So you said Jordan Peterson, who I like, but Malcolm Gladwell is one of my favorite authors. Malcolm's a California guy. He's from USC, but he has a book called Tipping Point. You had read that one? Chapter 30 is a tipping point. This is the tipping point where you're at the time where if they go with Hilton Smythe, like if they roll with Hilton Smythe and be like, Alex, you didn't hit 17%, you hit 12.5%. And our metric and our agreement was you had to be above 15. Therefore, you're gone. And everything that they did up until that point and everything they could have taught that company on the other plants would be lost. That's the tipping point.
Yes.
So Malcolm Gladwell he goes through a series of case studies where this happens all the time. Freaking Blockbuster could have bought Netflix for like an
Yes.
insignificant amount, right? I don't know if that's one of the case studies. I can't remember now, but the tipping point is this decision.
Mhm.
Are we gonna get rid of Alex's Unico plant because they didn't make the decision, but kind of but Bucky Burnside's over here being like, this is awesome, this is a decision, and if they make the wrong decision, it could be detrimental to the whole company.
Yes.
It happens in society. That's a different book by Malcolm Gladwell and some
Right.
Jared Diamond stuff. But that tipping point, that what I'm trying to say is like there are moments, very important moments that make or break companies, and at the moment you don't understand the
How
consequences.
big. Yeah. Yeah.
And time over time, that book is like time over time over time over time over time. Governments, like major corporations, small companies, just time over time over time. That if you don't make that decision in the right way, there's dire consequences.
Yes.
And oftentimes, it was the company that retreated back to the comfort zone, to a traditional approach, failed.
Mhm.
Failed to the point where they were no longer in business
Gone.
years later. And there's lots of, I don't want to pick on any company. If you
Right.
go pick up that book, Tipping Point. It's such a good one. But that's chapter 30. Such a good one.
Yes.
And they're at that moment. And chapter 31, Alex got to go back to corporate and plead his case.
Yeah. That 3%.
He's like, ooh, what is this? So he has this blistering report, and I'm sure that accountant, there's all kinds of metrics, and they did. And the reason why they said that they didn't hit the 17.5% because they looked at it through their efficiency metrics. The old way of measuring production was, hey, they had idle resources, and not idle resources on bottlenecks. They had
Right.
idle resources on non-bottlenecks because they pulled in the rope. They
Yeah.
pulled that rope in and then said, we're going to put in a control mechanism to limit inventory, cut our batch sizes, and all of those decisions made old Hollywood metric. They made those Hollywood metrics. They didn't look good anymore. So that now they're Hollywood metrics. If they were once at 80%, they're now in the 20s and 30s because they were letting the non-bottlenecks sit idle.
Yes.
So if you did that calculation, the old calculation, you had downtime on a non-bottleneck, they calculated that as that's a waste of money. Therefore, your operational expense, you underreported.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you're somehow, I don't know how you did it, Alex, but you somehow hid money, and which in fact wasn't true. They lowered their operational expense by eliminating a whole bunch of inventory by smaller batch sizes and synchronizing their production with their constraints.
Yeah.
And being super efficient with the resources at hand versus letting non-bottleneck work just keep producing and keep increasing
for the sake of operation.
For the sake of these Hollywood metrics.
Yes.
So I don't want to spend too much time on chapter 31, but it's the tipping point was Alex goes into Bill Peach and basically convinces them that we have to change the rules. We changed the game, or we changed our game. Yep. We got to go to the commissioner's office and change the rules, the tuck rule.
Yes.
Right? We have to go change the rules, the way that we're measured as a plant, because we've now found a way through this series of focusing steps that the accounting metrics that's traditional, that we're comfortable with, that people who have degrees from Brown and Harvard. And I'm not saying that if you have a degree from Brown and Harvard, that's bad, but I'm just saying that if there's a traditional approach, we can't always rely on the traditional metrics. Don't always apply if you do optimization. So your traditional measurements are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of a sudden, not only do we have to change what we do on the job site, we have to change what we do in the forward operating base, or the trailer, so to speak. We have to change that.
Yep.
We have to change our marketing campaign. Now we have to change the way we do business.
Yes. The entire system.
The whole system needs to change. And it's just like chapter like 9 or 10. If you have local optimization, right? Like, hey, we found Herbie, it's NCX10, or we found Herbie, we did the heat treat, we send a third of it off to a third party. That's great. That's great. And it's great. And it helped. But what really helped was the difference in the way we did priority in the scheduling work.
Yeah.
And that was great. And that made optimization. And then all of a sudden we had capacity. So now we had to change the way we did sales. And that helped because now all of a sudden we're locking in these sales because we're being more productive with our throughput. But now we have to look at like a bigger part of our business and the way we do accounting and the way we manage resources. And this is big money. Like this could have effect on capital planning. That means like building new factories. And I'm personally invested in building factories. I was on 2 last week and I was on 1 today, a factory. So that these capital expenses, so investment, we have to change the way we look at investment. So we have to change the way we look at the future based upon optimization. That's chapter 31, and I'm very glossing it over. But now all of a sudden you have to make a decision, and the tipping point was Alex Rogo's method. This is great, and now it's proven, and now it's several months worth, and now he goes and convinces Bill Peach, the CEO, that this method is better. But the naysayer, Hilton Smythe, is being like, no, he's lying to you. He's got to choose. Somebody's right. Who's right?
Right. That's the decision. Which one are we going with?
This is the tipping point, because if we get rid of Alex and his plant, because he didn't make 15%, Hilton Smythe, the operate directly linked to he's the operations manager, so he's the line boss for all of the plants at Unique.
Yeah.
So now if Alex goes away, the only dissenter is gone.
Yes, and things will continue as normal.
Yes, and now so it's a very, very, I don't want to spoil it. That's chapter 31. It hangs it right there. It's like Alex's promotion, because this is the decision. Are we gonna go with Hilton Smythe, or are we gonna go with Alex Rogo?
Yeah,
they have to make a decision, and it's very internally focused. We would just let it hang there.
Yes, I think so. Till next time.
But and these decisions happen all the time.
Yeah,
that we have a traditional approach, and we have this innovative approach that looks promising, but it's very remote, like it's very thing. But like to do Alex's theory of constraints, it's only limited by decisions and policies that are done by corporate.
Yep.
So to continue to grow this method of managing with drum buffer rope and theory of constraints and all this stuff, you have to continuously expand this program because it's a system. It's limited by the system. So if you want to continue to grow the company and get 17.5% at all your plants, we got to make some changes. Everything now, all of a sudden, everything is on the table, including top brass, including top management, including top. And it's not people's jobs; it's just the policies and procedures.
Right.
That's the theory of constraints. If you keep elevating, if you can't remove a constraint, you keep elevating, you keep elevating, you keep elevating. Eventually, you'll hit a policy, or a key decision, or whatever it is. If you can't elevate beyond that, because hey, we have to change policy. If we're unwilling to put that policy on the table, that's where that constraint will die. And if you remember from last session, one of the cardinal sins of theory of constraints is letting a constraint be idle,
leaving it alone. Yep.
Because it's like illness. Certainly, maybe the symptoms go away for a while, but if you have a major illness, you have to deal with it, and the sooner the better. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with mental health. If you
Yes.
have symptoms of depression or whatever, deal with those now. Deal with those now. If you
Yes.
can't deal with those now, go seek help.
Yes.
811. Seek the help. Seek the help and go get it and be brave. And it's hard to be brave when you're stuck in your own mind, but and if you're unable to seek help and you see somebody that needs help and you don't react, that's on you. That's on you. And
You gotta rest.
I carry a lot of that on me because I fail to react to a whole
Mm.
bunch of problems with people suffering. So, and it's the same with constraints. If you get a constraint and you're in a leadership position and you fail to act, that's that's no longer a constraint. That's a leadership problem.
Yes.
So I'll leave it on that too because I'm a huge proponent of that. I'm definitely not perfect in the letting constraints be idle. I definitely let some sit around,
But
but
that's the
now
thing.
it's a very conscious thing for me now that I try to do action on constraints. What do you think?
So, I mean, that's the thing, right? I think that's the important thing is in continuous improvement. When you start getting there, start doing it, you're going to discover new things to improve. So don't kick yourself in the face for what you did. I mean, I think, I can't remember which conversation it was. We were talking about when you learn to see, you can't unsee.
It's like a
And so
butt crack.
yes, yes, the butt crack. I was coaching the finance manager for a company, and all of a sudden he could see. Right, like I was doing some A3 coaching with him. He had a
Oh,
big business.
choirs of angels.
Well, at
Oh,
first he's
yeah.
for me, I'm like, oh my god, you can see. And his next response was, it was two things. Like he's like, Jess, we got so much waste. Like there's so many things that we need to fix. Like, yeah. And I was like, but calm down. Like the business isn't going to go under. It's always been there. You just couldn't see it before. And he's like, oh, that's horrible. I said, I agree. So now we have some urgency to go and fix things. Yes. Okay, good. The other thing his bigger takeaway was, oh my God, the way I have been training and developing my people, all I've been doing is ruining careers, limiting their capability because I never gave them space to be autonomous. I gave them answers. I gave them direction. I didn't help develop their thinking and their problem solving capabilities. And like that really got it. Like, again, you're on this path. Use those experiences, those missed opportunities to fuel the improvement going forward. So if you have a tendency of seeing a constraint and not acting on it, it's done. It's behind you. You know what the outcome of leaving that constraint was. Let that be fuel to go and take action on every other constraint you have in the future. Because we can absolutely, and for me, it's always going to be this. We absolutely can improve the quality of life for the men and women out there in this business through continuous improvement. Yes, we can have profit. Yes, we can have all those other fancy things.
You can do that at the same time. Yeah.
You can do it at the same damn
Yes.
time.
You can what does Joe say? Leadership capital. You can increase your leadership capital and increase your profitability at the same time.
At the same time. You know, I had a session with the client today and we were working on conditions of satisfaction. And so, you know, what were they wanted to get out of this path that they've just embarked on and what does winning look like? And Thomas, there were like 3 stickies on the wall. The definition of winning was higher quality of life for us, higher quality of life for our people, higher quality of life for everybody that's on our job sites. And I was like, oh my God, I hit a gold mine over here. These people, they want to make things better for other human beings. That's how they're defining success of their continuous improvement efforts. I was hearing angels sing today, my man. I'm excited.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And there's a ripple effect. So
Yes.
the reason why Bucky Burnside flew in on his helicopter is because there's a reinforcing effect. People, it's like a magnet,
Yeah.
and if you keep reinforcing, it's exponential.
Yes.
And the reason why you see companies become incredibly successful is because of that. It's like, whoa, they have an advantage in this one thing, and if your advantage is people are just emphatically crazy about working there.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Yeah.
I'm doing this is your stock price.
Yeah.
Because if people are and this is being very, I don't know, like, and I am excited to work for the company I work for that reason, because I'm empowered. And if I have an issue that I can't solve myself, I'll elevate it, and the people will take action. They will take action, and instead of being like bouncing back off, bounce and boom, hits me back in the face with like, you need to go try this, Thomas. Like, no, like, we'll try a different angle on the issue at hand. And and guess what happens? I'm now excited even more to go try some new stuff. And that's awesome that the people you're working with have that same mindset. And I think if everybody did, imagine if that was just the way.
Dude, yeah. We'd be having helicopters everywhere.
Just choppers, just
everywhere.
But I think I really like the chapters 29 and 30, because you will win and you will have naysayers at the same time. Yeah. It's this weird moment, and I felt that because the CEO of the company was showing up and being very like very interested in the company. This is my own personal story, and this is a true story if you care to believe it. And at the same time, we don't have naysayers, but you have your peers, and it's a competitive environment because there's only so many slots for the promotion thing. So then that definitely plays as well. That narrative starts to trickle in, and my downfall was listening to that. I wouldn't say downfall. Like I didn't downfall, but like it slowed my progress, because I would now have to also combat that. And my advice to everyone is like, when those whisperings start turning into words, and those words start turning into statements at meetings that you're actually involved in. Yeah. Whatever. Here's the 17.5% right there. Boom. Yeah. Just point at that.
Can count it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you're going to spend a bunch of your time trying to figure it out. I don't care. I'm on this optimization track. Next month's going to be 21%.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Just chart my progress. I wish I would have done that instead of getting torn down. So my advice is
keep going.
Be different. Keep going. And it's okay to, when you're courageous and you've done something courageous, now double down. And it's hard. It's super hard and super risky on an emotional level, but you got to do it. And Alex in the fictional book does it. And for me, I definitely did it. I took a risk that when I decided to leave operations and teach my method, and we'll leave that for next time.
Ooh,
I'll let it hang there too.
I like it. Double hang. Oh my goodness. You're either driving down the road or just so enthralled with this whole podcast that you went all the way down to the very, 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 very end of it. And we appreciate you. And we're going to take this as an indication of your dedication. So we got a little special request of you, a call to action, because everybody tells us that like you need to have a call to action. So here's the call to action. Be kind to yourself. Go out there and share a smile with someone.